Right guys, going live today from an office workspace. So first of all, big thanks to George Knight at Hub Sydney for providing me with my own office for the day. It's been a while since I've gone back to the board. I haven't done this since I was in the UK, so yeah, going to be explaining calorie cycling for you today, and it's going to be great to have the visual cue of something a little bit more than just my fingers. So calorie cycling, what is it? It's when we utilise the best out of being in a caloric surplus and being in a caloric deficit so that we can make the most from spending days that are high, days that are low. Because even though you're on a fat loss journey, there's a huge amount of emphasis on making sure that you want to preserve muscle tissue or even put your body into an anabolic state from time to time to not only preserve existing tissue, but to enable you to, build a bit of muscle whilst losing fat at the same time. So those of you out there that are quite clued up will appreciate that you can't do both at the same time, because we're either in a generative state or a degenerative state. So we're either in a building process or a breaking down process. We're either in a position to build muscle or we're either in a position to lose fat, and you can't do both at the same time. So what I'm going to show you here is a very simple way of going about this so that in your week you can make the most, rather than what I'd advise for most people is when you do want to lose fat, you're going to have to go from where you're at with your calories and bring it down. And for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, you're going to want to regulate your caloric intake. Build some habits, ensure that you're eating enough protein, getting a day-to-day routine of, getting that baseline deficit right. But there's going to come to a point where the fat loss that you're starting to see is going to slow down to a point that something else needs to be done with your calories. So I'm going to explain that a little bit further today to make it seem a little bit better. So there's a fictional character here on the wall. Let's call him Bob, and let me show you. So here we have it, calorie cycling. So what the red line is going to indicate is Bob's surplus, and what the green dotted line is going to indicate is where he had to come to reduce his calories. So he's come down to this point here for quite a while, which is all good, and he's starting to lose a bit of fat, but he kind of wants to build some muscle and lose fat and make a little bit more process with that in the meantime. So what you're going to have to decide to do is, first of all, how many days are you going to train? How many days are you going to decide that you want to be in that surplus when you want to build muscle? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw in black pen. Let's say I'm going to give Bob a 3-day split, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, which is very similar to what I get people to do on the program. And I'm going to block these out as training days. And I'm actually going to put Bob on the exact same amount of calories that he was gaining fat on, which I'll show you now. So there you can see it. I've given him a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday weight session. So his calories have gone up to where they were before. So as far as what I'm going to do with Bob's training, because the priority is still fat loss, I'm going to put him on something called a full body. So I'm going to write on there FB. So now Bob's calories have gone up on those days. It's very important that we have to create a deficit. We have to create somewhere where he can lose fat, because we've just moved his calories up away from the position he was losing weight. So now what we're going to have to aim for is 3 deficit days. So now I'm going to select 3 days on the board, which I'll show you in a second. I'm going to call them DD, deficit days. And on these days, we're going to go a little bit lower than what he'd have gone to before. But the idea of these days is that we want to target fat loss, because on the training days, we don't want to bring his calories down too low. If we bring his calories down too low on his training days, he'll feel like crap. So I'll show you that. So now we've got deficit day, deficit day, deficit day. So at this point, his calories are now the same, but on these days, we're going to fuel him a little bit better to build muscle. And on these days, we're going to benefit him a little bit more to lose fat. So what we're going to do with this Sunday? Well, you don't want to be dieting on every day, you don't want to be training every day. So on that, I'm going to set him as a maintenance, which you should be able to see from here. It's going to be exactly where he was before. Now, when you do this and when you implement this into your dieting, it means that you can have better results for fat loss on some days. You might go to bed a little bit hungry, but it doesn't matter, because the next day you get to eat more. You get to consume more than what you were having when you were just on your deficit diet. So this will play into recovering muscles. This will play into targeting fat that a little bit better. How much you cycle by, you need to experiment with. But implementing something like this means you can better fuel the anabolic process which is in place to build muscle, and that you can actually deprive your body of adequate calories on those fat loss days to speed up your fat loss process. So your protein is always going to stay the same. Your protein requirement day to day always has to be the same because you are providing enough protein for the amount of mass that you have in your body. So usually that's dependent on weight. We've spoken about that before. If you're not sure, feel free to comment. So then you've got your two fuel macronutrients, and those are going to be your carbs and they're going to be your fats. So you're going to want to stack your carbs on the higher days, which is cool. These are the days where you're eating more. And on these deficit days, you're going to want to bring your carbs down. The lower the amount of carbs you have on those days, the more likely your body has to be forced into using its own substrates as a fuel source. So I'll show you this one more time and run through it. So here's Bob's week. We've gone from that baseline of where he was before. I've given him 3 days now where he goes up, where he trains hard, his carbs are high. I've given him 3 deficit days where he can skip the gym, maybe go get 10,000 steps done when he's doing, or he's going for walks or whatever, anything like that. And this is just going to be his regulated day. That's going to be back to normal as far as it was before. So by implementing this kind of structure to your diet, I mean, you don't have to do it all the time. You can maybe pick 1 or 2, 3 weeks of the month when you implement these. So these deficit days can be as low as you like, but the holistic amount of calories should still add up to the deficit that we were aiming to be in before, if that makes sense. So all of these blocks here still add up to where the green line is, because that's what his diet calorie amount was. We don't want them to stack up and add to too much, otherwise they'll be on the red line, and that's where he was gaining weight or he wasn't happy with his composition. Being a bit smarter, moving these around, just makes your life a lot easier, and it makes sure that you can get the best out of both states that the body goes in, which is anabolism and catabolism. Building, breaking down, growing muscle, losing fat. That should help. Happy to be back at the board. Thanks to Hub Sydney for providing me the office space for today. Hopefully they'll be providing me with some office space a bit more in the future so we can go back at the board a little bit more. Thanks for tuning in.